We've just about caught our breath here after an amazing All-Ireland semi-final between Tipperary and Wexford. Tipperary are now in the All-Ireland final. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Tipperary and Kilkenny, but jeepers, as I said to Liam Sheedy down there, how the hell did they win that?
Yeah, they just didn't give up and they stuck to it. They just upped their work rate, I think, when John McGrath got sent off. Wexford seemed to sense the finishing line from a long way out. Started to hit a lot more direct ball. They got a goal and 2 points to put them 5 points ahead. It was 116 apiece when the sending off occurred, and then Wexford just accelerated. It appeared into the under, but Tipperary hit back then with 5 points on the trot, and then the goal came, which was another sucker blow, and they answered immediately with 2 on the trot, and then after that till the very end it was just nip and tuck. And Tip made 5 substitutions. Most of the players have never been heard of before, and nobody had factored in that there was a strong depth of bench with Tipperary, but he used it and he wasn't afraid of it because his forward line didn't function. But most of that was down to Wexford, to be fair about it. But I just thought Wexford were so close. They saw the finishing tape in front of them, and I think they went away from what they had done so well throughout the game. Very structured, fast moving, players fanning out when in possession, creating overlaps, and I thought they went a little bit more route one, and it didn't work for them. Ronan Maher in particular picked up an awful lot of ball, Barrett picked up an awful lot of ball, and then with the space that was up around the middle of the field, with Tip down to 14 men and the type of thing, Tip were able to pinpoint passes. Wexford didn't mark as closely as they had been, and Tipperary were very accurate. Bubbles had been out of the game in the first half, picked off some good scores. Same with Ford, same with Callanan, and these are class forwards, and Wexford just didn't mark quite as closely, and when they got the ball then most of the time they were just aimlessly hitting it, which they hadn't for the whole game, and it was more a case of hoping the finishing line was going to come to them as opposed to seeing the door ajar but structurally getting through it. But unfortunately the patterns just broke down for them, but Tipperary stuck to their tasks instead, working, never dropped ahead, and that's a huge win. When the final whistle went, the Tip supporters and players celebrated like it was an All-Ireland. They know how close they come from being dumped out of this year's championship.
Does that kind of happen, like you said, when Wexford kind of lost their shape? They saw the door and they ran at it, perhaps maybe have taken the steps they needed. Is that lack of experience?
Yeah, it's a fair point. Arguably it is. When you've not been there before, obviously they have a provincial championship, but this is high stakes. This is All-Ireland semi-final. The prize is great. It's a day players will never forget for the rest of their lives, and they would have thought about that coming into this game. You can't let your mind wander too far about a final, but you do like to think about it, and you do like to think about, we're 70 minutes away from the biggest day of our lives, and I just thought up to the point that Tip had started well the second half. They'd got the first couple of scores the second half and they'd drawn back level and gone a point ahead. But Wexford still manfully stuck to the way the structures and the players fanning out and the overlaps, and they were still pinging a point in here and there. So there was very little in it until the sending off. And after that I thought Wexford upped it, played very well. The goal came from the offloading and it'd been done at speed and clinically finished. And then after that it was like, I thought with 5 up, it was a long way to wait for a finish line. And I just thought the way says a lot about Tip, the way they kept picking scores. But then when Wexford got the goal, I put them 3 ahead again. I thought if they'd gone 4 or 5 ahead, that was it. But to do what Tip did again, to resurrect themselves continuously, at least 3 different times in that game, they resurrected themselves, and they didn't know when to lie down, and they refused to be put down. And they kept their shape, and they kept doing the right things, and they kept always trying to give the proper ball out, whereas Wexford were hitting it a lot longer. When I thought they could have kept possession a little bit more because they're good at it. They're very good at it. So to answer your question, I think it's a fair question you ask. Was it a case of inexperience? Arguably it probably was. Yeah, the finishing line, they wanted it to come to them as opposed to them structurally, keeping their shape and getting over the line. Just unfortunately for them, it didn't happen.
Obviously the big talking point that we could see this evening, and I could hear in the interviews downstairs, was about the standard of officiating. Now, in fairness to both Davy Fitzgerald and Liam Sheedy, they both said, look, things could be better, but being a referee is a hard job, and if somebody has to do it, and you have to be grateful that people are willing to stand up and do it and be sideline officials. Some of the decisions, not everyone would agree with, some would. So is the problem, instead of constantly complaining about officials and referees, should we look maybe at miking them up? At the very least, then we might know why they're making the decisions, and there might be a lot less giving out for a start.
Well, I actually don't understand exactly the question because Joe asked me from studio. I didn't think he did it a whole pile wrong. There was 3 contentious issues. One was the Tip disallowed goal, where the umpires obviously made contact immediately with the referee and believed that a point had been scored. and they were right.
They were.
And actually they were sharp-eyed to have picked up that it was. But Hogan caught the ball and then delivered it down the field. Passes ensued and Tip got a goal. But in that intervening short period of time, contact was made with the ref. The message got to him. He blew it up and he went back. And a really, really good decision was taken, because a Tip goal there would have been a big sea changer. Wexford actually went 4 ahead as opposed to going down, and it was a right decision. The second contentious decision I think that we're talking about was McDonald in the square. I thought he was in the square when the ball landed, but you had two guys standing there who are umpires, and that's their job. It's not that difficult from there to be able to see. The referee's out the field. He's totally entitled to go in and say, in your opinion, guys, and he'll have told them this before the game.
And we'll expect a referee to do this too.
They prep the way managers prep. They prep the way players do. And he will have told his umpires, right, on the ball. And we've seen refs mic'd up before for the the Waterford Galway All-Ireland final. And referee telling his umpires, this is a big day. It's a big day for you guys. It's a big day for me. Same with the linesmen. You get your decisions right. Okay? The basic fundamentals you get right. He goes in and he asks his two umpires, and they're basically seem to me to be pretty unsure, and the goal was given. I don't blame the referee for that. He's 50 yards away. In relation to the last decision, I'm probably one of the few that doesn't blame him. I watched the referee put his arms out and blow the whistle when the ball was in the air as Shamie Callanan was being fouled, and I think that's a logical thing for him to do. Now, if Shamie Callanan had the ball and he was about to throw a pass, you say the referee should allow the play go on and ensue for a few seconds to see did it get. And we see too many referees blow that. But that's not what happened here. The ball was struck from distance out the field, I think by Pádraig Maher, and as it was in the air, he was being dragged, and the ref saw it directly and blew. Now that's different from, I'm watching the ball in the air, so do I let the ball in the air? The guy has been fouled. He's on the ground actually before that. How does he allow advantage accrued there? Now, as it turns out, they did get advantage and they did get a goal, but it wasn't like he was in possession. I would agree if Callanan was in possession of the ball and it looks like he's going to offload it, then fair enough. But I saw the referee blow the whistle when he was been fouled and dragged to the ground, so I don't think he did anything wrong there. But you see, a lot of people look at it on TV and they only see what they see. Oh, did he blow it when the ball landed in? He didn't. He had it blown well beforehand. So I thought the referee was very good today, and I think any criticism is harsh. But in big games like this, someone loses. And when someone loses, they usually have a beef. And if you have a beef, it's usually with an official, because you have to blame somebody. Maybe a lesson should be taken from John Kiley's book yesterday, where he wasn't looking to apportion blame to anybody. They make mistakes the same as everybody else does. Today, I actually thought he refed it well.
I mean, I don't think anybody would argue that's a challenging job, and I think that's the crux of it there. An All-Ireland semi-final, what's at stake is priceless. You can't put a value on it.
Absolutely, and I don't think the guy did a whole pile wrong. I really don't. They got the decision right with Brian Hogan. It was over the bar. He was proven right on that. We'll have a better look tonight on TV, and we'll see was McDonald in the square. If he was in the square, the umpire should catch that. There's no excuse for them. They've got it wrong. He hasn't got it wrong. He's gone in and he's told them before the game and at halftime, be on the ball, watch for this, watch for off the ball, watch for square balls. If they can't get it right from 3 yards, 2 yards away, that's not his fault. That's not his fault. It's his official's fault, right? And in relation to the last one, I would exonerate him totally. He blew the free when the ball was in the air. Could you argue the point? Well, if the best we can do today is arguably he was right or arguably he was wrong on one major contentious decision in 70 minutes, I don't think he got a whole pile wrong. I think sometimes it's easy for us, to reflect on what we should be reflecting on what was an outstanding game of hurling, and I think this referee aided it. I think he was good. I really do.
Finally, let's move away from officiating and, like you said, talk about the great standard of hurling. We saw it here today. We saw it last night as well in the other semi-final. I've noticed the last few years, a lot of the time, the semi-finals tend to be better than the finals. Though this time it's Kilkenny and Tip. What's that going to be like?
Well, if it's anything like 09 and 010, 2009 was the greatest game of hurling I've been privileged to watch in my lifetime. Not just the greatest All-Ireland, but the greatest game of hurling. Some will say 2010, but it was both sides. 2016 was different. To me, Kilkenny got back to an All-Ireland final, but they weren't the old Kilkenny. And on the day, Tip bet them well. Callanan, of course, went to town, and I thought it was about right. I think most people thought Tipperary. I didn't think Kilkenny would get to an All-Ireland this year. I don't think most people did. Having watched what they did yesterday, they're growing nicely. with the generational gap that's there between the older leaders and the younger guys coming through, and the older leaders are bringing this leadership quality to the dressing room and don't just rely on Cody, because they're obviously demanding it off the younger guys, which all stems from the main man himself. Based on what I saw this weekend, I'd probably say Kilkenny, but then every game is a new game and takes on a life of its own. Tip will start as favourites. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Tip will be made favourites. That doesn't matter a hoot to Brian Cody. It's very early to say because we don't know about injuries, what will happen. I mean, if Shamie Callanan breaks a finger, or if TJ breaks a finger, well, the whole dynamic changes, and if anything happened to one of them, you'd say advantage the other side. So I think what we need to do is reflect on this weekend, reflect on two great games, enjoy the build up. There'll be quite enough now because it'll be football for the next couple of weeks, and the week of the game then we'll look and see the injury situation and we can dissect it even more, and I think it's only then we could probably make an informed decision, because now would be kind of an instantaneous, oh, I fancy this and fancy that team. It's more of a hunch than anything else, and a gut feeling. My gut feeling right this minute says Tip, but that's all it is a gut feeling. We reserve the right to change my mind over the next couple of weeks with a lot more kind of dissection of the games this weekend and over the year and the scoring averages, etc., because it's Brian Cody and it's Kilkenny. I mean, who wants to write them off? But we'll make a firm decision the week of the game, I think.